The British Ministry of Defense has published that they're developing a new deep strike ballistic missile for Ukraine. Nightfall, it's called, with the objective of carrying a 200-kilo warhead with a 500-kilometer range so that it can strike Moscow. It seems almost as if it's foolish now to still pretend as if this is a proxy war. I mean, Russia obviously hasn't escalated with NATO as it wants to avoid World War III, but restraint seems to, time and time again, be interpreted as a weakness. How long do you think this can go on? I mean, can the British bomb Moscow with 200-kilo warheads and still pretend this is a Russia-Ukraine war?
They can do it once, and then the reality of their errors will be made manifest as Russia strikes British. I mean, if the British don't think that the Russians won't attack Great Britain decisively, and when I say decisively, I mean up to and including nuclear weapons, there's no love lost between Russia and Great Britain. In fact, within the political elite in Russia, there's a great deal of hatred towards Great Britain. The British have never treated the Russians well, ever. And, the Russians are sort of fed up with this failing power, approaching failed power, continuing to insert itself in a manner that's, not just disrespectful, but, it represents a threat, not of existential nature, but a threat to Russia's national security. There's only one piece of good news in all of this. Nightfall is a joke. It's an absolute joke. I mean, just look at the numbers. Okay, we're told that first of all, it's in developing. It's not developed. It's developing. The amount of money that was allocated, I believe, was $9 million or 9 million pounds. 9 million, whatever currency element is attached to that. That's not very much. And when you look at the small print, they say that the goal is to be able to produce 10 of these Skyfalls a month at a cost of 800,000 pounds each. Now, I'm just a simple Marine. I don't claim to be the greatest mathematician in the world, but 10 times 800,000 gets you to the about 8 million pound mark. And if the total budget for developing this missile is do you understand how much of a joke this is? They don't even have a production facility yet. They have not built a prototype. They haven't tested a prototype. We don't even know if the concept works. It's the British allowing their mouths to get ahead of their brains once again. Yes, the Russians, of course, will be following this with great interest. But the idea that Skyfall is a weapon that's about to make its debut on the battlefields of Ukraine is a joke. It's not a weapon. It's an idea that's been totally underfinanced. 9 million pounds. Do you know what the payroll of a missile production line is? It's more than 9 million pounds. So they haven't even hired the people yet. They got a bunch of scientists somewhere, with chalk, drawing pictures on a board, taking snapshots of it with their iPhone and sending it to the defense minister saying, we have a plan. That's all they have. So I don't think anybody's losing sleep over this. It's just another, stupid idea from a nation of stupid people.
Yeah, so another headline or article coming out of Britain by one of their generals, Richard Shiref, who was warning against some of this more aggressive rhetoric coming out of London. That is, he made the point that the idea of sending troops to Ukraine was kind of out of the question because they don't have the manpower, they don't have the money, they don't have the military equipment, and also not the political will, either by the political class or the public. So what is the point of all this escalatory rhetoric if they can't even back it up with anything real?
Because we're in the theater of the absurd right now. This is pure theater. The British have a plan, a master plan they've been seeking to implement in Ukraine called Keep Ukraine in the Fight. A key aspect of that is the psychological preparation of Ukraine for sustaining a conflict that, by any measure, it's being decisively defeated in. Um, at this juncture, any rational leadership, having assessed the totality of the picture, understanding that there was no pathway to victory, would be looking for a pathway to avoid an even more decisive defeat. But that's not what's happening in Ukraine. The Ukrainian government, um, in in a way that just defies comprehension, continues to double down on stupid and undermine whatever, you know, strategic resources it had and plans, throwing away reserves and fruitless attacks for propaganda purposes, because this is all propaganda purposes. Everything that's done in Ukraine today is for propaganda purposes. They launched drone attacks against Lukoil drilling rigs in the Caspian Sea. They didn't destroy the rigs, but they got their video that they were able to put out there, and they have Zelensky meeting with the new head of the Ukrainian intelligence services, talking about how we have struck deep into Russia. And do they not understand that the retaliation that Russia will inflict on them is going to be extreme? Good chunks of Kiev don't have power, don't have water, are not going to get power and water restored. Much of Ukraine is in a similar fashion. The Russians just unleashed a second Oreshnik on the Ukrainians, which, given the silence of Ukraine about what happened, implies that the Russians sort of hit what they were planning on hitting and getting done what they planned on getting done. And so the British right now have to do, these staged actions. They meet in Paris, the coalition of the willing. They may be willing, but they're unable. you know, I don't want to get too crude here, but you put a 110-year-old man in bed with a 22-year-old starlet. He may be willing, but he's not going to be able. And this is Europe. This is the UK today. They can't perform. They're literally pathetic. 76,000 is the total size of the British military. And that, now you parse that down into how many of those are actually combatant troops. And when the British are talking about deploying 7,600 troops, they can't. They don't have them. They literally don't have them. They can't deploy them. They're incapable of physically moving these troops out of the United Kingdom into Ukraine and then sustaining them. The logistics alone is beyond the capability of the British military. And when you talk about sending a force in, I mean, there are two things. One, where's your rapid reaction force? I mean, you're going to put 7,600 troops in harm's way. What happens when the proverbial bovine excrement hits the fan? Who's riding to the rescue of these 7,000? There's no one to ride to their rescue. They'll be dead. All of them will die. But then also, let's just assume that they don't die. What's their rotation? 6 months? That means you need another 7,600 training up to replace them, getting equipped, brought up to speed, which they are unable to do. These British troops are not combat deployable. They're not combat deployable. They can barely get out of garrison. Okay, so now if you scrape everything together and you get 7,600 deployed, you need another 7,600 to replace them, and you need another 7,600 on top of that, preparing, getting ready, getting your paperwork done, getting your final training done, preparing. That's how a standard rotation works. The British can't do it. And they know it, and they've been called out on it by their leadership. It's an absolute joke. The same thing with the rest of Europe. I mean, nobody in Europe can do this. And now we come to the Skyfall. It's a non-existent missile. I'd be surprised if it ever existed past the prototype. Let's just put it this way. If you have a missile that's 800,000 pounds, it's not a very sophisticated missile. And you think that missile is going to actually penetrate Russian air defenses if it is produced? No, all it's going to do is make England a target. And I don't know how many more times you have to listen to Dmitry Medvedev say, guys, it's going to happen. before it's going to happen. You have members of, the Russian Duma saying we need to strike now with nuclear weapons. I mean, this is where this conversation's gone. The Russians now are taking a look at what the United States is doing with NATO, and they are firmly convinced, at least at certain levels, that they could strike Europe with nuclear weapons and the United States would do nothing. That the United States will not commit suicide on behalf of Europe, especially if Europe is provoking the Russian bear, so to speak. It's a very dangerous way of thinking. I don't agree with it. I actually think we would do something. I think we'd end up with you know, a general nuclear exchange and all life on the planet would end. But Sergei Karagana was a very influential political thinker, has famously or infamously said that the United States will not sacrifice Boston for Poznan, meaning that Russia could throw a nuclear weapon on Poznan and the United States would do nothing. So this is where we're at. Now we have the French pretending that they have a strategic nuclear deterrent capable of holding Russia at bay. You have the British pretending that what's left of their strategic nuclear deterrent is relevant. Um, and you have the Russians making the decision that Oreshnik is staying, not just staying, but will be a part of their strategic nuclear deterrence profile um, indefinitely, which means intermediate nuclear forces are now here to stay in Europe. Thank you, Donald Trump, and thank you, Europe, for destabilizing your continent. Um, and it gives Russia the ability to do strategic escalation in a non-nuclear fashion, which means Russia's more likely to use this weapon in the future. So, this is where we're at right now. Total disconnect from reality in Great Britain and in Europe.
Yeah, this project of keeping Ukraine in the fight, it's kind of strange that this is where we are now. There's no pretense that they can win. Just our goal is now for them to lose slower, and again bleed out the rest of their manpower. It's so dark because you know that if there was the British troops being slaughtered in this way, they would not have put this as an objective to keep the war going at any cost. They would have made a deal or pulled out by now. But again, they're fighting with Ukrainians, so I don't think they're counting their losses